you should absolutely consider playing both Divinity Original Sin 1 and Divinity Original Sin 2, the two CRPGs that Larian Studios put out prior to BG3. These two games, I'd say, both fall into my handful of games that would make up some of my personal favorite RPGs of all time. And while they're both definitely not for as large of an audience as BG3, they still might be for you. And I'll even say that if you're someone who isn't necessarily huge into the CRPG genre as a whole, Pathfinder games, the OG Baldur's Gate games, etc. While I'm certainly not saying that the original Sin games are better than any of those, they are different. So if you don't appeal to some of those and you've never really felt like you liked the CRPG industry or you weren't that interested, the Divinity games are a little bit different, and perhaps they will actually make you interested, or maybe they won't. But the first reason why you should at least consider giving these games a try is that Larian has referenced both of these games in their statement about their upcoming Divinity game. While Divinity is a brand new game that doesn't require experience with previous Larian titles, those who've played Divinity Original Sin and Divinity Original Sin 2 will be able to enjoy greater understanding and continuity. So perhaps even if you end up not loving either of these games, it still may be worth a run through one or both of them if you're someone who is like me and you're super excited for Larian's upcoming Divinity game and you want to have a deeper understanding on not only Larian game design but also the lore in the world, as the upcoming Divinity game takes place in Rivellon, just like Original Sin 1 and 2. Now, both of these are massive games. You certainly don't have to play both of them. If you're on the edge as to if you want to give one a try or not, most likely the second one is the one that you're going to want to go with, as the second one is a lot more updated. It has more quality of life features. It's a lot more user friendly. Not to mention, the second one also just got an update for PS5, Xbox Series, and Nintendo Switch that allows it to run at 60 FPS on those consoles, and there's a few other updates to it. So the second one is going to be a lot more modern feeling. It's going to have a lot more quality of life features. With that said, personally, I like the first one just as much, if not more, than the second one for a few reasons. So don't completely rule out the first one. The first one is also available on consoles as well as PC, but the second one really is the one that most people talk about. It was like Larian's start of bigger success than they've ever been used to before, and then that of course led to Baldur's Gate 3. And also note that although both games are very much related to one another, the second one's not like a direct continuation of the first one. There's actually over 1,000 years that passes in the Rivellon timeline, in the Divinity timeline, between the two games. They have similar themes. They focus a little bit around source, both of them. In the first one, you're a source hunter, while in the second one, you're a sorcerer. And it's kind of cool to know both of them, but you don't have to play the first one to play the second one. I should also mention that both of these games do support controller, and while mouse and keyboard is going to be more efficient due to inventory management and stuff like that, it's really impressive how well controllers actually do work for both of these games. And both these games are multiplayer. The first one is 2-player co-op, and Original Sin 2 is like Baldur's Gate 3 in that you can play 4-player co-op. Now, if you've played Baldur's Gate 3, which most of you have, the first Original Sin and the second one both are similar to Baldur's Gate 3 when it comes to general gameplay design and feel, even though Baldur's Gate 3 is obviously on a much, much higher production level, and it takes some of the themes and some of the design elements from Original Sin 1 and 2 to the next level. But at their core, all three games are similar, which is why I do think a lot of you Baldur's Gate 3 players will enjoy Original Sin 1 and 2. They're all party-based games. In all three games, you have a party of 4, and you do have choice over which companions that you want to take with you. They're all turn-based games, although keep in mind the combat system from the Divinity games, Original Sin games, is pretty different from the turn-based combat system in Baldur's Gate 3, as Baldur's Gate 3 goes off of 5th edition mechanics where you have an action, a bonus action, and a reaction, while both Divinity games have an action economy system where you kind of build up a bunch of points in a single round, and it's up to you how many you want to use. So you can do multiple attacks and all sorts of different things. It's a little bit more active of a game, of a system when it comes to your particular turn in combat. You can typically do more in the Divinity games than on a single turn in Baldur's Gate 3. Now, Original Sin 1, I actually like the combat better than Original Sin 2, as Original Sin 2 has an armor system where in order to deal damage to an opponent, you have to either deplete their physical shield or their magical shield before you're able to get to their HP, while in Original Sin 1, you can just start dealing damage. And although I think it's an interesting idea, it definitely frustrates a large group of Divinity Original Sin 2 players, the armor system. There's a big debate over it. There's a lot of people that aren't a huge fan of it, but even with myself not loving the armor system, the combat overall is still fantastic. fantastic. But all three are still turn-based RPGs, and all three games also are divided into acts. We'll just say 3 acts for the most part to keep it simple. 3 big acts where you have access to a pretty big map in each act, just like in Baldur's Gate 3, and it's up to you how you want to kind of navigate that map, although the original Sin games are a little bit more strict in terms of allowing you to venture into areas that are dangerous and being punished for that, while in Baldur's Gate 3 you have a little bit more leeway with maneuvering around the map and not nearly be punished as much. But all 3 of these games, their maps are very sandboxy, and this is a very Larian type thing because you don't see this a lot in the CRPG industry. When you're on these maps, you can kind of go where you want and try out different things and sneak into certain places, and of course interact and engage with the environment. Now, Original Sin 1 has the least amount of this. Original Sin 2 ramps up the sandboxy freedom nature even more, and then Baldur's Gate 3 takes it to the max because Larian progressively was gaining more resources and more experience, but all 3 of them still have that sandbox Larian feeling. As you can see in the footage that's playing right now, this is from my stream last night if you're watching the video the day of release here, and I was moving boxes around in Original Sin 2 to try to block off a bunch of these very, very hard opponents. I was playing the game on Tactician to try to block off their avenue of approach to my party, and it actually worked really good. I was able to create a choke point on the stairway. I was able to keep the mages back. They weren't able to get to me, and some of the enemies were taking time to destroy the boxes, and this gave me time to, you know, focus fire. All that stuff is very Larian feeling when it comes to the CRPG genre. Sandbox nature, you can engage with the environment, and most importantly, you can be creative with the environment. And this is one of the biggest reasons why I'm such an advocate for Larian CRPGs, because this is like the perfect style of game for me. It's a CRPG. They all have a ton of depth. They're all party-based games, but then Larian CRPGs in particular give you this environmental creativity that you're able to deploy if you are someone that is creative thinking, or you can try to handle things a little bit more straightforward as well. But the freedom is there and the choice is there for you to mess with these games in the way that you want to. Now, there's a few reasons why you might end up not vibing with these games, even if you liked Baldur's Gate 3. And the first reason is that the production quality is not nearly even close to Baldur's Gate 3. So you're getting 2D cinematics, and all the dialogue that you get into, you're not really watching anything. You're just looking at a dialogue box, and then the narrator is a great narrator, by the way. The voice acting and everything is really good in both games. You're just listening to the dialogue and just looking at, you know, your 2 characters standing there or whatever. There's no actual scene to watch or anything like that, which isn't very entertaining to some people. And also, I want to note, as someone who has played all 3, to me, both Original Sin 1 and 2 are much harder than Baldur's Gate 3 on their base difficulty. Probably their harder difficulties too, actually. On all the difficulties, I haven't played the easy difficulty, so I can't speak for those, but Original Sin 1 and 2, they're much harder than Baldur's Gate 3. They're a lot more punishing, and unfortunately, they're not explained that well, but that's what YouTube's for, right? And I actually put out an Original Sin 1 guide on the channel like a month ago. I'll have a link to that down below in the video description, and I'll have a guide for the second game coming out soon as well. But they're a lot more hardcore in terms of the difficulty, and you're going to be messing up a lot, not only because the game is hard, but you're also not going to understand some of the mechanics because they're a little bit confusing. And like I said, especially in Original Sin 1, there's like virtually no tutorials. Like, you won't even know how to level up your character. You won't really understand what classes are or anything like that, because both games feature a classless system, but you don't level up and then just get skills and abilities that pop up in your face. You have to get certain skill books from certain vendors, and if you don't know where the vendors are, it can be super frustrating. So you have to go into these games knowing that things are not explained that well. You have to meet prerequisites in order to go down certain skill lines, and you have to have a certain amount of points to end up getting a certain skill book. And you can go into all the skills if you want, but it's probably not smart to do so unless you're really, really experienced with the game. So Larian really makes you figure out things on your own, but of course that is what Google and YouTube is for if you're not really into wanting to do that. And as somebody who doesn't consume guide content really that often, hardly at all, these are 2 games where I probably would on my first playthrough, even though I did. Well, looking back, like, there's a lot of frustration that you can have with these 2 games with just not knowing what Larian is expecting from you and not knowing Larian's style. So if you come into these as a Larian noob, they can be so confusing. Also, a warning given, both of these games, especially like the first couple sessions that you play, you're going to be doing a lot of dialogue. And if you really are just not into any of that, I think you can probably still enjoy the game because the sandboxy world and combat is really fun in both of them. But players that are willing to enjoy the dialogue and not skip a bunch of it are probably going to get the most enjoyment out of both of these games. But your first couple sessions, for example, when you get to the first town in Original Sin 1, in Original Sin 2 in the beginning, when you're meeting all the companions at Fort Joy, etc., you could spend potentially hours at a time just talking to characters. So if you're really not into that, just make sure that you really sold on the combat and stuff like that. Otherwise, you might feel like this game is dragging on a little bit too much, or it's taking too long for the action to get started. But all in all, there seems to be a lot of interest in both of these games, especially the second one, ever since Larian announced their upcoming Divinity game, and both of them have big thumbs up for me. Neither of them are perfect, but when it comes to just overall fun and enjoyment, 5 out of 5 for me on both of them. I will have individual reviews coming out for both of them where I get a little bit more into the nitty gritty, and I won't, just say everything is perfect like I am right now. From a fun factor standpoint, though, both of those were 100% worth the money that I spent, and they both offer so much content, so much more than most other full price games out there. And these two games are not full priced anymore. I think they might even be $20-something on consoles right now. I think there's a sale going on, but on PC, it looks like Original Sin 2 is Original Sin 1 Enhanced Edition is $40, and it looks like Original Sin 2 is $44 right now. So when it comes to content offered and just fun levels, both of them offer plenty of that. You're going to get your money's worth, unless for some reason you just don't like the game, your first couple hours. But if you do end up liking it, there's so much to explore. I'm very excited to see more people coming into the Divinity universe. It's exciting times, and yeah, much more Divinity content to come on the channel, as that's pretty much all I think about and do these days. Catch y'all in the next one.